And so we can see from this illustration that we've seen before that the accounting function spans multiple business processes in the value chain. And as a result of this, there are multiple different cycles that we have to take into account within the accounting system. So we want to be aware of and understand the purchasing cycle and how the accounting system integrates with the purchasing cycle in ways like accounts payable, in order to provide value to the purchasing function. Purchasing function being a significant part of the supply chain management system. We want to understand how the payroll cycle integrates with the operation and production systems cycle in order to or function in order to understand how it is we can design that module to provide value-added services. And we look at the sales cycle as part of the accounting system and how through accounts payable or accounts receivable or cash applications, that cycle might provide value-related support to the customer relationship management system. So again, we're looking constantly at how the accounting system provides value to the enterprise-wide systems that it supports. And you'll recall that this diagram or this figure illustrates for us the baseline accounting systems and how each of these functional areas that relate to vendors, customers, or employees, and then banking, financial, and reporting all relate to the accounting system. And so this just simply illustrates that if we expand each of the cycles to show its integration with these different areas within the baseline accounting system. So we can get a head start by using a baseline accounting system with modules and transactions that are common to most enterprises. And again, this gets back to when we think of our mnemonics A, B, and C's of accounting systems are that the accounting system A equals the baseline system or B plus customizations or C. And generally what we see is that across industries, certain software applications or certain accounting platforms are generally accepted and used by preference for a lot of companies in specific industries. For example, I know in the government contracting industry, Deltek offers multiple products that are often used by government contractors because off the shelf, right out of the box, these applications provide many of the configurations and setups and outputs and processes that are inherent to that industry and to the companies providing support to clients within that industry. And so by going down this path, while there may still be some customizations necessary, while going down this path, these customers can often use this product in order to meet a large proportion of its required functionality. So the baseline accounting system is a generic accounting system that includes the workflow and business processes frequently used by most enterprises. To create a customized accounting system, we configure or customize the baseline accounting system to accommodate the unique needs of the specific enterprise. The baseline accounting system, such as the one shown here, can be customized to meet an enterprise's specific needs. This customization is done by customization of the baseline processes. So again, it's just important to note that baseline, we hope, gets very close to our processes. But we can customize the baseline or add additional functionality onto the baseline through customization to meet more unique needs. And in some cases, it's also important to note that we may decide to change some of our business processes in order to better match and make use of an accounting system's baseline functionality so that we avoid the customization costs and disadvantages that come along with that. A business process map can be drawn using different types of symbols and notations. Some of the standard notations are flowcharts, data flow diagrams or DFDs, unified modeling language, UML, or business process model, and notation. And the preference to which one of these different types of tools that we might want to use to illustrate what the business process is really driven by the user of that information or the user of that process diagram. So perhaps, for example, flowcharts are often used by accountants because they're easy to understand, they're easier to execute or to implement, and they just meet our needs from an accounting standpoint with respect to the illustration of an accounting process, where data flow diagrams or unified modeling language might get closer to be closer to what a programmer needs in order to fulfill their responsibilities in the system design and implementation. And business process model and notation, or BPMN, is a compromise between the two. It provides accounting with what it needs. They're a little more difficult and complex to develop and read, but it can be used by accountants, and it also provides a little more information on the system development side. So again, it kind of depends on, well, who's using this tool and for what purpose. So the sales collection processes and the tasks shown on QuickBooks homepage for the customer selection are what we see here. And so if we see that we create an invoice, we receive payments, and we record deposits, this is what we see in QuickBooks. But if we want to look at the process flow behind that, we can use something like a flowchart diagram that we just discussed to illustrate that process flow. And this is what that flowgram diagram would look like. We have a start, we create invoices, we receive customer payments, we make deposits, and then we're at the end of the process. And each of these components, the start, the create, the receive, make, or end, are illustrated by these symbols. And each of these symbols within standard flowcharting technique have specific meaning that, as you become more familiar using flowcharts, you'll understand. This illustrates a data flow diagram for the sales cycle processes. And so here what you can see is that we've taken a customer, we create the invoices, the exact same step that we had earlier in our flowchart, and we've broken that down into the data that's used, the relational database tables used to create invoices beneath it. You can see we have the customer table, the sales order table, the sales order line table, and then the item table. And each of these tables presents us with fields and records, of course, that are used in the create invoices and which are also used in the receive customer payments. We could do the exact same thing for the make deposits, but you can see here we're focused more on the data used in the process flow rather than simply the process flow. And so you can see how this might be something that would be more useful to the IT or programming side of the house rather than the accounting side. And so this BPMN diagram provides us with an even more or different look to the same sales cycle processes than our other flowchart or DFD diagrams. And you can see we have in what we call swim lanes. That's the rectangular boxes by customer, accounting, or bank. So we've taken the process, and in some cases we've expanded the process and we've attach them in a swim lane to the responsibility that is associated with that action. And we'll see later on these can become very complicated. But again, because it provides more detail, it's generally more helpful to the IT side of the house than it is into the accounting side. And so why we as accountants like flowcharting is that there are only 5 symbols used in building flowchart diagrams. So when we're learning how to document business flowchart or business processes, flowcharts are a nice place to start. Once we've gotten more comfortable with just the diagramming or flowcharting process, we can transition to UML or BPMN to help provide the IT side of the house and perhaps the accounting side more detail and perhaps more informative, useful diagrams. But you can see we have these 5 diagrams: start inbox, a decision symbol, a process symbol, a document symbol, and a process flow. And there are a few others, but these are the ones used most often. There are decisions, there are page connectors. We see the decision, but there are also page connectors, end process, and a few other symbols that can be used in flowcharting. So this is another example of a flowchart that's a little more complicated than before with respect to the create invoices, receive customer payments step of our previous process. And so you can see that it just kind of digs down into a little bit more detail, uses a few or an additional symbol like the decision symbol to proceed with the order, but it does provide a little more information than the higher level flowcharting diagram we looked at earlier. Some documentation tools, such as UML diagrams, may use over 100 different symbols. Introduced in 2011, BPMN 2.0 provides a business process mapping standard for bridging the gap between IT professionals and business users, such as accountants. BPMN 2.0 doesn't require extensive training to use, making it a better choice for accounting professionals to understand and communicate with IT professionals. On the other hand, it does provide greater detail than flowcharting to meet the needs of IT professionals for successful system implementation. So BPMN really provides a balance between simplicity and complexity to facilitate communication between the accountant and IT professionals. And here you can see some of the symbols that are used for BPMN 2.0, and you can see the difference between some of those and the symbols we looked at under flowcharting. At the same time, here we can see that same flowchart that was made up of a couple of boxes, and this is blown up a little bit to include a few other more detailed steps inherent to some of those processes we saw, but you can see how much more complicated this create invoices process can become to document using BPMN 2.0 than it was under flowcharting. And so essentially when reading a BPMN process, you are basically attempting to answer the question, who does what, when, where, and how. To do this, we have 7 steps. We need to identify the start event that triggers the process. So what kicks off the process we're documenting? We have to identify the activities. We identify gateways where forking or merging data flows occur. We want to identify our data objects, identify our data stores, trace the data flows, and then identify the end event. When building a business process map, there are some general guidelines to follow, which are noted in our text. Notice that there should not be data flow between 2 data stores, 2 data objects, a data store, or a data object. And so after learning how to read a business process map, the next step is to learn how to build one. And what we'll do for the rest of this discussion is to walk through the 5 steps to build a business process map. So step 1 is to write a narrative for the business activity. The narrative is just a brief description of the steps and actions taken, and it just helps us to understand and to be able to articulate exactly what is the process flow that we're mapping. So after the narrative is written, the next step is to annotate the narrative to identify the activities. And so here you can see that we've highlighted in red those activities. And you'll note that the activities typically start with an action verb, such as process or generate. So here we're just simply annotating the narrative to identify the activities. Step 3 is to create a table to summarize the information about activities, participants, gateways, data objects, and database tables needed. And so you can see in this slide here, we're showing the table after. So we've taken our narrative and placed that narrative into this table or map organizer. So we have the activity, we have the decision gateway, or the gateway, a decision that needs to be made. We have a swim lane, so who does that activity? And then we have the data tables that we would use as a result of that activity. So step 4 is to select one event from the EAD table and build a DFD or data flow diagram for that one event. This can be referred to as a DFD or data flow diagram fragment. And so you can see that what we've done here is to identify the different pieces of data that would be used in these items under the data row in the Espresso Office overall swim lane, which is comprised of an accounting, warehouse, and data swim lane. And then finally, step 5 is to repeat steps 1 through 4 for all sub-processes as needed until we get to the desired level of detail. And again, so now we as accountants who develop this are intimately understand the process, and we understand it in a way that can be made more useful to our IT development team. So that completes chapter 4 of our text. Again, I encourage you to go back and read the text. Don't let this discussion substitute for reading, and then we can move on to the next chapter. And thanks very much.